Here we go. How to turn fat into muscle.
How do you?
And then how do you turn muscle into fat? And slow metabolism. Fitness myths, number 369.
Whoop.
Does muscle turn to fat and vice versa? How do you turn fat into muscle? Here we go. Drum roll, please. Neither one of those are correct. Now, here is actually what is correct. All right? Let's think about how energy, right? What is that law? Every action has a equal and opposite reaction.
Right.
Okay.
You want me to Google it?
No. It's like Newton's third law or fourth or second or something. And then if you also think about if you believe in this effect of karma and how energy is always constant. So there's never a zero in energy.
Right.
Okay, and if you think about your body, there's never a zero. It's always moving in one direction or the other. Energy is always moving in one direction or another. Constant. All right? So if we think about that and we think about the human body, if your body is either always gaining or losing mass in tissue, constant. It's never just sitting there perfectly doing nothing. All right? Mm-hmm. Okay? So if you take that idea and you think the idea that energy is always moving, it's always constant. Okay? It's the energy you store via fat or muscle is one energy.
Okay.
If I need to get rid of fat, that energy that is fat has to be dissipated out. Okay, so your body has to be in a state that the fat wants to metabolize into energy. So if you really think about where fat goes, where does the fat molecules actually go when we lose them? Trickery. 2 parts. Through your breath. I wonder why we always practice breathing. And through heat. Okay, so your body, that's how energy moves out of your body. It's either going to be exhaled out through energy or the heat out. Okay, so that's how...
It's like used.
That's how it gets moved out. If you think about muscle, if you create muscle, you consume, right, energy, calories.
Okay.
And you put demand on your muscles.
Mm-hmm.
So then the demand creates a sequence that uses the energy you consumed to create itself.
Okay.
And that's how muscles get created. So you have to have resistance, you have to have load, you have to have lots of things for muscles that get created. And actually, by the way, do you know that there is actually no proven scientific law of how we build muscle? There's several theories, and no one knows exactly what happens. True story, okay? So literally, no one knows how it works. But they do know that you put demand on muscles, put calories in your body, muscle gets created, okay? So, if I want to turn fat into muscle, literally what you have to do is you have to lose fat and you have to gain muscle through an energy. But the energy from fat goes away and you have to consume energy to create muscle. The energy that's inside fat doesn't just go through your body into muscle.
That's what I picture.
Right? Now, most people when they think, I know this guy who was muscly and he was a football player in college and then he got fat. It wasn't because that muscle turned into fat. It's because his activity level decreased by 1,000% and he was probably consuming the very similar amounts of food. So his muscle dissipated the excess calories, lack of movement, created fat.
Created fat. And didn't just exchange for.
Right. That's not an exchange for.
Okay.
That's what it looks like, though. We think, they had muscle, now they have fat. That muscle turned into fat. No, the muscle went away and the fat became more of itself through consumption and lack of movement. Cool? Does that make sense?
Kind of.
You can drop.
Stuff.
What are you confused about?
I'm not confused.
Okay.
It's just a lot of information that I've never thought about in that way.
Okay.
Like, I've just always kind of thought that, like, the fat left.
It does.
Like, you use it, almost.
You do. But technically speaking. You using it, you consuming it, right? Mm-hmm. It gets consumed, it gets expressed via heat or your breath.
Now that makes sense. Right.
Okay. Right. And that same thing can happen to muscle. You have muscle, right? And when it starts to disappear, it leaves the body the exact same way. Right? Yeah. Did you know that every year after 30, you lose 3% of your muscle mass? I was talking to someone today, one of the bazillion things I went and talked to humans about out in public. It was exhausting. Strangers.
Strangers.
He was in probably his late 30s, and he was talking about, it's just so much harder to get that muscle. Yeah, because after like 35, literally our bodies are on the downhill. Like, they're trying to die after 35. So us doing all the healthy things we can do in resistance training and heart health for our cardio and consuming high quality foods and not over consuming is literally just pushing the pause button on dying.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
But
that's literally how it happens.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Let's get back on track.
Back on track.
What are the questions do we have about building muscle and losing fat?
Drop them below.
You can drop them below. If you're watching this video later on, you can still drop them below. Now, let's talk about how does that affect a high or a slow metabolism. Okay. The more muscle mass you have, the more energy you create. All right. So on the in-body scale at the gym, it says like resting RMR, right? This is a calculation off of a few different numbers. And if it says like you weigh 100, this is me, right? So 175 pounds and you're 12% body fat and you have 80 pounds of muscle, you have a RMR of 1,600 calories. Okay. If I stayed 12% body fat and I increased my weight by gaining more muscle, all right, I have more muscle mass. That number, that RMR, resting metabolic rate, will increase. So my metabolic rate will increase with the more muscle mass I have. Okay? Now, but if we gain the same proportionate muscle and fat, it doesn't have the same rate.
Does it stay the same?
Right. Just because you gain more fat doesn't mean that your metabolism rises. Okay? So the more muscle you can gain and the lower your body fat percentage, the higher your resting metabolic rate. So let's say that I maintain the same amount of fat percentage, but I increased my muscle. So say I was always 20% body fat, and I continue to raise my muscle without raising my fat.
But like, would your weight raise too?
Yes.
So like you weighed 175 and now you weigh 180, but your body fat is still that 12%.
Yes. My metabolic rate, my metabolism will be higher.
Which is why sometimes being less weight on the scale.
Right.
I mean, you can't always look at it as a negative.
Right. So, you hear those things, well, if you eat more meals more frequently, that'll raise your metabolism, or if you work out in the morning, or if you skip breakfast, all those things about raising your metabolism are such a per person thing that there's too many variables. Genetics being the biggest variable that is changing whether or not you have a naturally high or low metabolism. I know people who fast who feel hungrier because of the fasting. But I know people who eat small meals and they feel hungry because that's how their body just responds to nutrient timing. But it doesn't mean that one is better than the other one. The only one true thing about raising resting metabolism is decreasing body fat percentage, increasing muscle mass. If we can do both, then we'll have a higher metabolic rate regardless of how much we weigh. So the ratio of body composition is what can determine resting metabolic rate, right? Some people who have a slow metabolism from excessive dieting have in theory, what they've done is the cycle that is metabolism runs at a RPM, okay? Now, let's say that you're always decreasing body weight and decreasing muscle, decreasing fat. You're becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. That wheel starts to move slower because that's your body's response to being less human. The less of human I have, the slower this thing goes. Then we find ourselves, if we don't allow the wheel to move faster by creating muscle that spins the wheel, right? Or giving it the appropriate amount of actual calories based on how we're moving, then it starts to move the wheel faster.
Right.
So say we bump our calories, right? Which increases our amount of movement because we have now more energy. That increases the wheel. Does that mean that because we're not losing weight, we have a slow metabolism? No.
Right.
It means that you're not in calorie deficit long enough.
Could you overeat and would cause the wheel to go slower?
Yeah, because if you overeat, you're just increasing your rate of fat to muscle, which is slow down your metabolism. Okay? Makes sense? So the least muscle mass you have, the slower the metabolism. The more chronic of a dieter you are, the slower your metabolism. How do you fix a slow metabolism? Gain muscle. But when I say gain muscle, that doesn't mean eat cupcakes and do cardio. That means, I'm going to bump my protein up a little bit. I'm going to eat a little more carbs on my workouts. I'm going to make sure that the majority of my workouts are under resistance training so that I take a period of time, a phase of gaining muscle, and what competitive bodybuilder, bikini stage people, like shredded, they jack their metabolisms up because they try to phase back and forth. Phase back and forth. So what they have is they call these, they call them like a reload diet or a
bulking and cutting phase.
No, a backloading. Reverse dieting. That's what they call it, reverse dieting. Where that's like, okay, I know for a fact, not guessing, that I've been in calorie deficit because my body fat has gone down, my muscle mass has gone down, my body weight has gone down. Now I'm going to find a maintenance calorie that aligns with my movement output that puts me in an optimal state to maintain and gain muscle over 4, 6, 8, 12, 16 weeks, right? So they're rebuilding their metabolism by bumping slightly. So what they'll do is, we're not counting calories, but just to keep you on track, right? Say this person was eating 2,000 calories and they got down to 1,600 competition to like lean as possible. They have no energy, hormones are jacked, they have no sex drive, they can't finish their workouts because they're completely drained, but they're ripped, right? In order for that person to reverse diet, normally what you see is they go from 1,600 to 6,000 or 26 or 3,000 calories, and that big shift jacks the metabolism. So reverse dieting is saying 16, 18, I feel great, 2,000, I feel great, 22, I feel great, 26, wait, I'm starting to gain weight. My maintenance is actually 24. And that's how that world works. Danielle did the same thing she was chronic dieting with an uncontrolled amount of stress from working at her full-time job before moving on to just gym and photography. So even though she was chronically dieting for a very long time, on top of all the stress, her body stopped losing fat. And the body composition would not change. She just stayed exactly the same. Body fat stayed, weight stayed the same. And her body could not move energy because it was stuck in a pattern. Her metabolism and her hormones had locked it in. So she had to decrease stress and then slowly start to increase food intake, which mirrored her output in the gym, right? And then her body weight actually came down as the amount of calories she consumed went up, but her body fat percentage slowly started ticking away, right? And when we're talking that whole process, we're talking like
2.5 years.
Yeah, 2 years maybe.
Time.
I mean, it was a long time to kind of get back to a healthy place for the metabolism, right?
It's a process.
It's a process. Okay.
Build those muscles, though.
So
main thing.
that's other myths about slow metabolism, right? Yes, some people genetically have a higher metabolism. Should have picked different parents. Should have picked different parents. Don't have to tell you. This is how it is. But it's not an excuse. It's not a crush. It's not like, well, I've got slow metabolism. I can't lose weight. No, you have slow metabolism, which means it's going to take longer to lose weight. And it's going to be harder. Or you could spend 3 months focusing on high protein intake and resistance training until your body feels nice and happy and optimal. Then, once you feel great and you've gotten a little bit of muscle on you, without gaining extra fat, even though the scale might go up, your body becomes more optimal to become leaner. Because that's really what it's about, is the way we look, not the thing that's on the scale. Okay.
Yes.
Good. Who's watching right now that has questions about how does muscle turn into fat, fat turn into muscle, or metabolism? Drop them below. I'm waiting. I'm going to give you 10 seconds to drop any question about these. House is on fire. Danielle blew the house up.
I'm cooking. Oh gosh. I'm cooking.
Open the door.
No,
Okay. No questions?
Oh gosh.
You haven't done anything. You're just still cooking things. She still put the fire out. The kitchen's on fire. The kitchen's on fire, and she loves the beeping noise.
The kitchen's not on fire. Get out of here.
Hey, when you're watching this, if you have questions, put them below, and I will happily answer them. I hope you learned something. I love doing these videos.
I learned something.
Danielle learned something. I've been studying this stuff for...
Ever.
What's 37 minus 14? Do that math. 23 years?
Yeah.
23 years.
Wow.
I remember I was 14 when I read my first magazine about fitness and nutrition, and then reading my first books. True story. I'm out.
It's crazy.
So, hey, whenever I'm in the group and I'm asking questions about making content and making training videos,
This stuff is fun.
let me know, because I want to help you and I want to educate you and I want you to feel comfortable with your process of strength, nutrition, and fitness.
Yeah.
Out here.
Bye.